All right. Well, thank you for that very kind introduction. And I will say that the love affair is mutual. I really enjoy the time I spend with you and Michelle every couple of weeks, and talking about both problems and opportunities for taking the site forward. So I'm going to share my screen. If I don't mess it up, hopefully. All right. Are you seeing?
Yay! Yes.
All right. So I am coming to you this morning from this red marker over Ann Arbor, Michigan, where on my side of the world it's 10:30 in the morning, and my tea break involved some coffee and still in the caffeination mode. So I'm more specifically joining from my daughter's bedroom, who's away at college. So this is my makeshift office, and so yeah, that's where I'm coming from. So I wanted to uh, go over a few things. So this agenda, well, let me go back to the top here. So I'll try to go through this quickly since we lost a bit of time with the technical challenges. So what I wanted to do is talk a bit about JSTOR Labs, what we do, and talk about Juncture in particular, and the Maps, Kent Maps collaboration. And then hopefully time permits a quick demo. I wanted to talk a bit about what we have now, but also maybe more importantly, where the Juncture platform is going and some of the improvements and changes that we have on the drawing board. All right, so if you're not familiar with JSTOR, JSTOR is a nonprofit, and we've been around since 1995. And our primary claim to fame is a provider of academic resources to higher education. JSTOR is used by, I would say, virtually every major higher education institution in the world, and if you're not using JSTOR, yeah, you probably should be. But JSTOR is the parent organization that the JSTOR Labs is part of. And our role specifically is to explore new ideas. So as a labs typically does, we are sort of a side organization to the larger organization, and our role is to kick around new ideas and explore those, and those that have promise are developed into more production ready features and capabilities. And we typically do this in collaboration with external partners. Over the years, we've worked with the Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C., the Library of Congress, Dumbarton Oaks, who I'll talk about a bit more, and New York Public Library, Columbia University. So we do a lot of external collaboration. Some of those collaborations turn into actual products or prototypes. Some are just learning experiences that we use. Um, let me jump to our website, because there is a project. It's not Juncture, but there is a project that has another Kent connection that I wanted to just touch on briefly. So this projects page that I have on the screen now shows our active projects. Our two main projects at this point in time actually are this prison access and prison project, providing JSTOR content for prison education programs. Many of those programs do not have any access to scholarly material, and JSTOR is interested in trying to help correct that deficiency. So that's one of our main projects. And the other big project that we're working on is this text and data mining platform. There are links to both of those projects on our projects page if you're interested in more information about those. But the one I wanted to point to specifically is this Understanding Series project. This is a project we did a number of years ago, and the idea behind this project is that it provides a way for users to locate academic resources, but rather than going to a search engine and playing your 20 questions with a search engine to try to find a journal article that is of interest, we turn the tables around and you start with the primary text and then let the primary text point you to the articles that may be of interest. And we have a number of primary texts that have a Kent connection. Of course, Dickens is probably the obvious connection. So we've got, I think, just shy of 100 books that have been connected in this tool, and I'll pick one not entirely at random. One thing I will say is that this collaboration with Carolyn has opened my eyes to some of the literature from Kent. Dickens in particular was not on my radar prior to this collaboration, and with the inspiration of Carolyn and Michelle, I've taken the plunge and read a number of Dickens, and my favorite is Our Mutual Friend, so I use that as the example here. So the idea behind the Understanding series is that we show the primary text, so in this case, the novel. Let me make the screen a bit bigger, it's probably not terribly legible. But the idea is that the text is analyzed, and then each of the portions of the text, if it's a poem or something, it would be line by line, but for novels, it's typically paragraph by paragraph. And you'll notice these numbers along the side of the text. These are a count of the number of journal articles in JSTOR that have been connected to that section of text, so that reference a passage in that text in some fashion. So if I click on that, you'll see a list of, in this case, 4 journal articles that quote that paragraph in one way or another, and there are links back to the page in JSTOR that journal article that does the quoting. So it was kind of a fun project, something that if you're interested in those kinds of resources, you might find of interest. Okay, so that's the Understanding series. The project I want to talk about in more depth is this Juncture project. And Juncture, if I look at Labs projects generally, they fall into 2 broad categories: discovery projects where we're testing out an idea, we develop a prototype, and we do some user testing and such. And for those that have promise, they sort of transition into this second phase, this incubation stage, where we try to make them more robust and scalable, and then sand off the rough edges. I would put Juncture sort of in between these 2. I think we've validated the basic idea. We've found that the idea has value, and we have a couple sites that are now using it pretty extensively. But recognizing that it's still early days, there are a lot of things that it could do better, more easily, in particular, and so I would put it in this, sort of leaving discovery and entering incubation stage. So what is Juncture? It started with a grant-funded project that we did with the Dumbarton Oaks Library and Herbarium. I think it's been at least 3 years ago. We just finished the grant-funded portion of the project this past fall. And one of the desires or outcomes of that project was to create a digital workbench that allowed for narratives to be combined with primary sources, images, plant specimens, maps, a number of primary sources. So we wanted to create a way for digital humanists to create these short narratives that provided both text and some interactive and engaging visualizations. So that was sort of the motivation for Juncture. In the early days, Juncture wasn't a thing. It was basically a project to create some resources for the Plant Humanities project. And it was around this time that the conversation with Carolyn had started, and it became clear that there were some areas that we could take advantage of what we were developing for Plant Humanities and use them in the context of this site that she was imagining for capturing these narratives and interactions related to Kent topics. I don't remember exactly when that started, but it's been at least 3 or 4 years. So we started to talk more about that and did some prototyping and created a couple early versions of the site that we iterated on. And as that evolved, so the infrastructure for the Plant Humanities project became, we cloned that in some sense, and it became the infrastructure for the Kent Maps project. And then last fall, we took sort of the best of both of these implementations and created this open source project, this Juncture tool that is now available for anybody to use. So anybody that would be interested in creating an essay or even a full-on website like Kent Maps, the tool is there and you know, freely usable. So the goals for the tool, again, to provide a platform for creating these visual essays. And this idea of the visual essay is not unique here. A number of tools and implementations exist. Story maps is one that is commonly used. Where I think this is somewhat different is that it uses completely open and free tools and does not require any licensing or anything. It's entirely text-based, so it does require a little bit of more manual work than maybe a form-based approach like Story Maps does. But in that sense, it's also more extensible and allows for more customization. So in our current state, we have validated the basic idea of the use of these interactive visual narratives. We open sourced the code base in the fall of 2021, and we're now looking at sort of this next generation that takes some of the lessons learned from this first implementation and applies them in a way that addresses some of the shortcomings and adds more capabilities. Carolyn mentioned the Carolyn test, and I think that's probably appropriate here. I would say in terms of the biggest area that I see for improvement, and that's in the authoring tools. I would say that the bar for Juncture use is somewhere in between Carolyn and Michelle. Think that I think that at this point, I'd like to lower the bar and really make it easier for a Carolyn of the world to author essays and such. And I'll hopefully, if we have enough time, I'll provide a quick demo of what I mean by that, what the authoring process looks like today versus what I would like to move to, which is a easier and remove some of the friction out of the various steps involved. All right, so looking forward, I want to take some of the lessons learned, simplify the tagging, create easier tools for creating the essays. And there are a few other areas that we find a little bit of a problem with the current implementation. I think the mobile device compatibility is a little suboptimal, to put it nicely. And then some of the way that images are referenced and used, I think, are also could use some improvement, especially in the area of accessibility. All right, so I'll try to do a couple quick demos here, and maybe playing with fire, given our technical difficulties earlier. We'll see how that goes. The first thing I want to do, and this has two purposes. One purpose is to show you the current process for authoring an essay, and I think to show that it's actually a pretty straightforward process, and maybe would entice a few people on this call and participating in the symposium to give it a try. Let me go to my GitHub repository. So that one of the requirements in approved authoring environment that I want to address is the requirement to use GitHub. So for those of you that aren't familiar with GitHub, GitHub is a free-to-use platform. It's now owned by Microsoft. They purchased it, I think, end of last year. But it's a free-to-use tool, commonly used by open source software projects, but it's really a general purpose tool. I mean, you can almost think of it as a Dropbox or Google Drive type tool. It's a platform for storing digital files. It can be intimidating for new users in that the interface is a little tech-oriented and the nomenclature used on the site is a little techy, but it really is a general purpose sort of platform. So let me go to my GitHub account. I'm going to create a new repository. So repository is basically, you can think of it as a folder. You're looking at it from the perspective of Google Drive or Dropbox or something. This is just a kind of a categorization for a place to put content. I'm going to create a new folder for this little quick demo that I'm going to do, and I'm going to call it Kent. And then do this. So the idea of Juncture is that using GitHub, you would create a file in a GitHub project that contains the narrative, the text for the essay that you're creating. So in this case, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to do some copy and pasting of text from our friend Wikipedia. So to show you, I've got this open. I'm going to just kind of grab some text here. Actually, this would be original text and then an actual essay like here. I'll just do the copy paste this. Give it a title. So this notation, this sign, is part of this markup language that's used to do some formatting of text. So putting a pound sign creates a section heading. And in this, I also will. So actually, let me just exit this and show you what that looks like. So to see the rendered version of it, you use the Juncture site. All right. And it will render that. Well, this is what I get for trying to get online. Okay, so that. All right, I may have to give up on the demo. God darn. But the point, I think the point is still valid here. That the process for creating an essay is to edit the file in GitHub and then go to the rendering site, see it in action. The process that we want to move to is a bit of an easier approach in that the content is edited through an interface that will be provided through our tool. And again, I'll do the same business here. I'll put the title in, I'll put the text in, and the previewing is done within the tool itself. Oh, that's not really working. Oh, there we go. Do that, and then the way that that images are added, for instance, which is probably the most common thing that an author will add as an image. I'll just go down here and find one on this page and drag it over into the tool. All right, so now if we open this up, we'll see a nice triple IF image in the right side. I haven't used it yet today, so it takes a few seconds for this thing to start up and initialize itself. But after the first time, it's pretty good. So we've got this nice image that is pulled from Wikimedia Commons, and as it's done, we provide a lot of information for proper attribution and rights assertion. You know, that's a big deal with using images to make sure that you're doing it in a responsible way, and the tool takes a lot of the drudgery out of the equation in that it creates these info boxes that provide the proper license and attribution information. And this also provides a nice interface for getting up close and personal with the image. So in this case, there's this really nice the cathedral, and you can zoom and pan around and interact with it in that way. Okay, so I think I'm out of time, and I could go further, but I think this gives you a quick flavor of where we're at and where we're hoping to go with this next generation, basically focusing on the improved authoring tools to make the creation of an essay much easier. So let me stop screen sharing and find I'm not seeing the place. Oh, there we go. I see. Yeah. Too many windows open. I have to find the right place. There we go.
Yay. Ron, thank you very, very much. And I'm going to show you on this one thing that I think Ron might have showed you if he had more time. Look, he is, some of you will have seen me waving these pictures at you before. Ron is also responsible for introducing us to possibly my favourite kind of way to lose several hours when I'm meant to be doing various other things. On our Duke of Edinburgh showcase site on Kent Maps, we have a number of these. So again, talk about collaboration. These were made through a collaboration with the BA in photography. So, oops, sorry. This is very frustrating for anyone who can't see it, because I'm saying something wonderful and you can't see what it is. It's coming. Right, so we're getting a very sinister message saying screen sharing has ended. I hope you can now see. So this was a collaboration with photography. These pictures, not the old pictures obviously, but the new ones were all taken by BA photography students. And the brief was, we gave them something like this and said, can you go around Canterbury? Partly for pragmatic reasons, it has to be Canterbury at this stage because this is HE, you know, and we didn't have the money to get them on a bus to Margate. So it ended up with some really amazing pictures of Canterbury, which actually turned out really well because, you know, it's Canterbury, for goodness sake, this is where we are. We've got some really great pictures. In future years, if we do this again, I think this is something that we might be looking for funding for so that we could actually send people around Kent to different places. But this is the pilot of it. They went around Canterbury, we gave them these old photographs and images, and their brief was to stand in literally exactly the same place from which the photographer had stood. So how they worked that out is, I mean, goodness knows, but they had to work out precisely where the photographer stood who took that original picture, and then take another one from the same place, from the same angle, because that way you get this absolutely beautiful sort of bang on. So do have a look at the Duke of Edinburgh site. It's on there partly because Duke of Edinburgh participants have done a little bit of the basic coding. Shout out to Angela Iridia, if you're listening, thank you, because she is a student intern working with us at the moment who's doing some image alignment on that and really kind of sprucing them up. But DofE participants have been involved in putting those on the site, and they're writing some text around them. We've got some lovely pictures coming of what Canterbury looked like in the 1909 floods, and against the image of what that looks like now. The cattle market will really surprise you when you see where that was. So we've got some really wonderful things